All right, I think we are live. Great, guys. Give a heads up on emojis if you can hear us. We'll start the session. All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the day 2 of TestMu 2023. Very exciting day so far. Some amazing sessions and panel discussion by industry veterans, and we are back again, with another session, Test Automation with Swag. For those who don't know me, I'm Misbah. I lead enterprise sales business at Lamites, and I'm your host for this super interesting session, Test Automation with Swag. Here, we will dwell into test data management strategies and automation landscape. We will further share the innovative strategies to supercharge your automation framework with limitless test data, transcending the boundaries of the conventional approaches. And let me now introduce you to our amazing speaker, Garvit Chandna. Hey, Garvit. So just to give you a bit more history about Garvit, right? Garvit has been in the industry for over 15 years now. He has got great experience of handling globally distributed automation as well as manual test engineering team. Garvit has a wide range of experience across management, architecting complex automation framework, and is currently working as a senior manager SDET with Equinox. I'll give this to Garvit to move on from here. But before he takes over the stage, I'd like to kind of discuss some housekeeping items, right? The first would be if we have a Q&A session, there's a Q&A section within the chat. You can post your questions and we can take them at the end of the session. This session will be recorded and you'll find it, clicking the view schedule button on the top left of your screen. And always, please feel free to make use of the emojis at the bottom of the screen to make this session more interactive. With that, I'll go backstage and let Garvit take forward from here. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Misbah, and thank you, Lambda Test, for giving me this opportunity to speak at TestMu 2023 conference. If you think you all gonna see some really cool stuff, then you are at the right place. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to each of you for taking the time to join us as we delve into the intricacies of Swagger in test automation. Over the next 30 to 45 minutes, we will discuss what is Swag. Swag is basically a short form of Swagger, and how this idea came into our mind when we implemented, how we implemented, and how much potential this solution have to solve few more problems than just delivering test data to your automation scripts. So before jumping into the cool part, I will start something about me. Myself, Garvit Chandna. I'm head of test engineering at Equinox, New York. Equinox, if you do not know, is like luxury fitness industry. Is like a player in the luxury fitness industry and have a couple of hotels as well. And in New York, I have total of 14 years of professional experience in test engineering. Started as a manual tester and then slowly going into the automation part. I am agile lover. I do everything, whatever it takes to implement agile in any sort of process. Even our automation things, how we do test automation, all the test cases, we do everything agile. We I am part of a team who built many in-house test automation solutions. We think that developing our own solutions in-house basically meet you much closer to the requirements. That's how we developed our test data services, which we're going to talk today. We also developed in-house framework to reuse test automation scripts, which we developed for desktop web application, and reutilizing the same script for mobile browsers as well, without much of a code change. We also developed some of the stable UI scripts with dynamic content, means where we have the website where the content or the picture or the text is changing very dynamically. We also developed a framework which basically can read the content and validate on the UI. So couple more, lot many things which we have developed in house, but these are the major accomplishment out there. Before that, I just wanted to showcase how test automation evolved within the Equinox. Is 2011 when I started, there was no automation. There was nothing related to automation within the whole organization. In 2013, we started web automation. We did 1,000+ cases automated on Selenium by 2014. In 2016, we added more complex application, which is Salesforce. We also automated Salesforce using Selenium. But in 2016, we also went to a major upgrade for one of our backbone system. That's basically the turning point of why we thought to deliver test data using APIs. So in 2016, when the system changed, whatever we did from 2013 to 2016 is basically paused because the major system when it is changing it basically had impact on every single piece of our ecosystem. And that's when we saw that whatever we wrote, either it is failing because of lack of test data or it is failing for any XYZ reasons. So in 2016, we changed our approach. We first thing we did is do more automation on API because that is more stable than UI, and more like a smoke test on UI, which is very fruitful so far. Then, and after doing that, we also saw whenever we change a backbone application or the backend system, the first thing will impact is the ability for the test script to get the test data for the use cases. So what we did is we built our test data delivery service, which is the Hypergate APIs written in Java Spring Boot, which talks to multiple databases. Not sure about all of your organizations, but in my organization, we do not stick to one database. We have SQL Server, DocumentDB, Postgres, and like Redshift and Redis as well. So there are like multiple data sources we have. So that is the need at that point of time where we build something which is like centralized solution which can capture data from different data sources and provide data to test automation scripts. In 2020, 2021, we also, once we developed our services, which we will going to talk about later, we also added some other stuff which is related to security. We added API gateway so it can be accessed outside of our VPN wall and we can control it. So we added API gateway on top of our Swagger APIs. Before we jump into too much into detail, what we did with the Swagger, there are multiple type of frameworks, but the major type of automation frameworks we have is five of these frameworks. One is your linear automation, which is nothing but a record and playback. You do like Selenium IDE, you go through the multiple screens or buttons, it records your screen, and then you can reuse that script later on. But it very unstable, nothing to add into it. Next is your data-driven framework, which is basically you are separating your test data from the script logic. That means testers can store test data externally. Modular based testing framework is implementing a modular framework which require testers to divide the application under test into separate units, like small units or sections, for which will be tested in isolation. After breaking down the application into the individual modules, the test scripts is created for each part and then combined to build the larger test in hierarchical fashion. Another next one is your library architecture testing framework. This is automated testing based on the modular framework. Is similar to that with some additional benefits. Instead of dividing application into multiple small units, we need to various scripts need to run, and similar tasks within the scripts are identified and larger groups of functions, so the application ultimately broken down by common objectives. Ultimately it is providing the same thing. The other thing is keyword driven framework. Each function of the application under test is laid out in a table with a series of instructions in consecutive order for each test that need to be run. So there are like multiple type of frameworks, and we see all these like five major type of frameworks. Out of all these frameworks, there is one common problem which we face. Any guesses? What is that? It is data. Data is one thing which can break any automation script. Lack of test data breaks things. Incorrect test data breaks things. So 70 to 75% of the automation scripts in general, not talking about Selenium specific, the UI, but majorly the most of the automation scripts breaks due to lack of test data. How to solve this problem? But there are some traditional approaches to provide test data. First is supply hardcoded test data. As a beginner, you always supply hardcoded test data within the script and then try to reuse the same test data again and again. But it is not a stable solution, as you all know. Everyone is experienced. Other thing is generate test data based on scenarios. If you have you're basically generating test data based on the requirement. It, but also it you are storing this test data somewhere in like either Excel sheet or your querying database. The other thing is write SQL queries within the code. That is also another traditional approach which most of our automation engineers follows, and they're still following. Is when they write thing to get the dynamic test data, they write SQL script within the code, and that's what is one of the best approach, I would say, but not maintainable or scalable. Feed test data using Excels. That's basically your data-driven testing framework where you are providing your test data using Excel sheet. You are putting all your test data within the Excel sheet and have your automation framework reads that data. Five major test data challenges out of all these traditional approaches. What we have is first is low variety. Until and unless you are not using SQL queries, the variety of test data you will be using within your automation scripts is very low. And the other challenge which we have is manual data creation and maintenance. If you are not using SQL queries, you are basically relying on creating all the test data manually, feeding the data manually to the test script or with some other means. Test data provisioning across teams and frameworks. Like different teams require different test data, different frameworks require different test data, different frameworks have a different style of reading test data. All that basically you are writing different utilities to read the test data from Exos or from different utilities or your hard coding. It increases complexity of systems and data. If you have like multiple systems which are like loosely coupled and everyone is sharing the resources, then basically you're looking at the test scripts when you're writing, you are increasing complexity. You have one thing in one framework, second thing in another framework, and when something change, you need to maintain a lot of things. Increased data protection and security. So data protection is nowhere there if you are providing SQL queries within the code. You are putting your database credentials within the code. Is not a secure way. The data protection is not there. You cannot do anything other than just providing the test data. So when we were trying to build a solution, which is our Swagger API, there were parameters which we have considered while building our solution. First and foremost, which we want to eliminate from all our test scripts is hardcoding. Whenever you hardcode anything, it works for certain period, but later down the line, it always bites your quality, or it always come and bite you when it requires maintenance. And you, at the end, you incur more losses than not hardcoding at the first step. The variety of test data it should pass. We do not want to supply same set of test data again and again to our test scripts. And when we provide a variety, we are basically opening multiple gates to find more issues within the code. If you provide similar set of test data, you will not find any issue. Exclude series of DB calls. When you have multiple frameworks running in parallel, when you have multiple test cases running in parallel, if you are hard coding your SQL queries within the code, you are basically making a lot of DB calls while running your test scripts. So that also we want to exclude while building our solution. Should be easy to maintain. Should be, I would not say zero maintenance. There is no solution in market which requires no maintenance. There is maintenance, but it should be like easy to maintain, not incur like lot of, not taking a lot of dollars from your pocket. Should provide security. Data security is one of the biggest and hottest topic in recent times, especially post COVID. And then it should provide security to our data, which we are utilizing in our test scripts. Reuse same data across multiple platforms. Read data from different data sources. When you have like multiple data sources, like in our case, it is SQL, Redshift, Redis, Postgres, DocumentDB, and more. We can either write all these utilities in each and every framework or each and every application, or we can create a centralized solution which have all of this, and all the automation framework can talk to that utility. So out of all these lucky 7 points, we considered our solution, and this is the high level architecture of what we built. So on the left, you see is we have our application under test. I listed only three. We have like 10 to 15. So on the left hand side, you see you have the mobile application, you have the admin application, and then you have the Equinox website. There are more. So all the tests which we are running is basically against Lambda Test Cloud. The tools which we are using is Selenium, APM, REST Assured, and SLQ. All of them have a different way of talking to databases, a very similar way, but each and every framework will be is set up separately, right? So when you set up your framework separately, and on the rightmost hand, like you see here, is the databases which we use. I listed SQL Server, DocumentDB, Amazon S3 bucket, Postgres. There are more like Redshift and Redis. So there are like multiple database types or data sources, and there are multiple automation tools which we are using. How to marry all of them with one thing. So what we build is this Spring Boot Cloud. These are our Swagger queries, which basically what it does is it receives commands from these automation frameworks. Let's say I need 10 users of this kind. It sends these automation frameworks and this data to Spring Boot Cloud. Spring Boot Cloud see what kind of request it is, and based on that, it queries. It looks which database it need to query, and then it queries different databases to get the data. The one major positive point here is we get data in JSON, which is basically combination of data from different data sources at single point. Let's say you have database A and you have database B. A use case requires that find a user from database A, which also exists in database B. You are basically making two different queries and making so many API DB calls if you are writing SQL queries. But this Spring Boot, what it does is it goes to two different data sources, process the data, capture that data, and deliver it in JSON format. And all our automation frameworks do not require all the different utilities to write in their frameworks. We just wrote these utilities in Spring Boot Cloud, and automation scripts gets data based on the need. You see here in not only databases, we also created a utility to get the data from Contentful, which is basically our content delivery system. And most of our websites are content driven, and it basically captures content from Contentful. So we have the utility to get the content from Contentful using graph query language and delivers data to automation scripts. Now let's talk about security and the part which I showed in the evolution is the how we evolved our APIs is the API gateway we added on top of Spring Boot. So we have multiple vendors who works for us, and sometimes they require test data. And when they require test data, the pre-Swagger thing was they create Excel sheets with a lot of use cases, send it to our internal team. Our team goes into look into the sheet, provide test data, and that goes back and forth multiple times, and basically eating up a lot of bandwidth from our resources. Why, when we added this API gateway, we basically selectively exposed a couple of APIs and gave that to vendors so they can access test data, which is behind our VPN wall, and then work on that test data. And we also mask that test data so no one knows what this user is. There is no identity revelation happening. The other benefit which we get is we also added AWS Secret Manager on top of our Spring Boot Cloud. What it does is basically we do not store our credentials in the code or the config files within the code. We store all our credentials to Secret Manager. And based on the token and the salt which we are using to talk to Secret Manager, we go to Secret Manager, get the credentials, and then pass it on to the database. So fully secure data identity is not revealed. Everything is basically we are developing within the this cloud. One of the other benefit of this is it is highly scalable, highly maintainable. Let's say, as I spoke about it previously in 2016 when we changed our one of the backbone system, we had to change a lot of SQL queries which we have written in the code. And we are talking about 10 or 15 different frameworks which we have written. So it requires a lot of maintenance. So now if something happen in future of that sort, what we need to do is just go to this Spring Boot Cloud, change the business logic there, and all the things we will it will automatically translate to the automation scripts. There is no need to change any script because of that. We just need to make change at one single place. So if you see all these points which I have discussed in the previous slide, we removed hard coding, we provided variety of test data, we removed a series of DB calls, very easy to maintain. We provided security to our test data. We have like we are sharing data to multiple frameworks, and we read data from different data sources. So all in one is like one single solution. Now let's deep dive into what is in there for Spring Boot within that particular cloud. The cloud which we see here, what it consists. So first off and foremost, we use Swagger, which is used for visualizing all our APIs. I think everyone is working on Postman or the Swagger APIs. So it is more like a documentation tool where you write all those APIs and give sample query parameters as all. The next is AWS ECS container. So all our services are Dockerized, and ECS container is nothing but is highly scalable and performance container management service. And since all our APIs are Dockerized, we deploy to EC2 containers. Application controller is basically it is a component or class that manages the overall flow of the application, including handling the incoming request, processing business knowledge, and coordinating the response. In the context of a web application, the application controller often deals with routing and managing different endpoints. Application service layer, if you see here, is basically a service layer that contains the business logic, that holds the whole core business logic of the test data, which we need to provide to test scripts. If you see here, just above the application service, you see this repository, which is YAML file. In this YAML file, we store all our SQL queries, which holds the business logic. And then this application service talks to different databases, capture the data, combine it, and serve it to the automation script. So on the top, on the right hand side, you see we have multiple data models. You have the Dynamo data model, you have the SQL data model, MongoDB data model, and Redis. So all these different data sources, we have created utility within our Spring Boot cloud, capturing data from there based on the need of the automation script, delivering data through the application controller via AWS containers. No local, there's nothing which is like locally hosted. Everything is in cloud, and that's how we solutionized our Spring Boot architecture. I will give you a short demo. I will play a video, and it basically tells you how it works. So if you see here, I'm providing the how many records I need, what type of data I need, what type of status I need. So when I run this query, what it is doing is it is going to different data sources. First, it is going to the one data source, then checking what data it is there, then going into the second data source, combining the data all in all, and then providing result in JSON format. How you see here is like it is providing data in JSON format. So you see, instead of writing, and this query, this API we use at multiple different automation frameworks, and it provides data to everyone. So instead of writing SQL queries to each and every automation framework, we created this API and just use these APIs across the board. Now let's talk about benefits. You already saw how it retrieves data from different data sources. Now the benefits is first, it is pure data-driven automation testing. Most of our use cases relies on different set of test data, different statuses, different users, and all in all, we achieve that with these Swagger APIs. And these Swagger APIs do not provide your test data, which is like used already. Once it is used, you will not see that test data in near future. So it is like keeping a track of once this API gave that test data, you'll not see that test data again. So it's like dynamic test data generation, which is our second point. It creates dynamic test data, or it not only like generate, basically capturing the test data from data sources and giving the test data. Test data reusability. Basically, all these APIs are reusable to different platforms or different applications, since we share data sources from within different applications. So we are reusing the same logic. Easier data setup. Basically, we don't have to set up any data. It's basically going into database, getting the data, and serving it to the automation scripts. There is no data creation. Faster test execution. Think about a solution where you have multiple data sources. You are writing multiple SQL scripts within your framework. You are doing all the filtering within the code. Your code is very heavy and all that stuff. Right now, what we are doing is we are just doing all that heavy lifting on the Spring Boot layer, getting the data, and that basically help us executing the test faster. DB diversification. And when we did not have this, the common problem which we have seen previously was, hey, do not have capability to query Postgres. We do not have capability to query Redis. Right now, this opens a lot of gates for us because Spring Boot itself comes with a lot of powers with which you can create those utilities easily to talk to different databases. Test environment independence. Instead of having all those test environment credentials into different write different transformations and all, we just need to change the Swagger URL based on the environment, and you get test data from that particular environment and just run it. Data security. And another best thing of this, which we never thought about it while building, is test data for everyone. As I spoke about it, like the testers always get requests from developers. Hey, can you give me test data of this particular scenario? And that's testers' duty to provide test data to developer. But we do not encourage that in our organization. What we tell them is use this Swagger APIs, go there, find what type of test data you need, and get the test data. So that's an added benefit of the whole Swagger cloud which we have developed. All right, cool. I think that's pretty much it. Now it's time to get some questions, whatever we have posted, and we will try to answer as many questions we can. Else, you can meet us offline. Yeah. Okay, Misbah.
Awesome. Thanks, Garvit. Very insightful session. We got really good engagement from the audience here. Got some really great questions. However, before starting the question, I just want to kind of say we have a poll as well, which I'll publish. And here you go. You can see it in the poll section. And we'll have the results of the polls delivered at the end of the Q&A. So now we'll start off with the Q&A session. So we have this question from Jan. All right. So Jan is asking, one of the biggest challenges he see for the dynamic test data is how to provide test data usable for teams throughout the whole company. And second, I think it's about how to provide the test data for the whole test pyramid. Suggestions, Garvit.
Yep. So we do not have, it's not like tens of development teams on one product. It's like different products, but different products share similar data sources. So let's say if I have an application for client facing, then I also have some admin tool for it as well. If I purchase something that does not, that goes to the admin module. basically at the end, both the application are sharing the same data source. So that's why when I'm saying like how to provide best data usable for teams throughout the whole company is we this Swagger is reading data from different data sources based on the needs and provide test data for different developers. Like different teams can use this and um, get the data, but someone need to develop these APIs. This is not like something which come out of the blue and things. We spent a good amount of time in developing these APIs and exploring more. As we see more use cases, we add a new API to it so that developers can use it. And how to provide the data for the whole test pyramid. Um, Test pyramid, I would say, is you have the UI layer, you have the API layer, and all that stuff. So this data can be utilized in any of the layer. Even for the manual testers, you can use these APIs. They are using APIs in our organization, and we do empower everyone with this tool so that they are independent of getting the test data. There is no dependency in any single person in our organization for test data.
All right,
I
that
hope I
was a
answered.
pretty detailed response. I hope, Chen, you got the answer. You can also meet, Garvit during the fluid spaces at the end of the session. But we have some more questions. There's another question from Jayan. So Chen is asking, considering the need for parallel execution and the scalability, what architecture choices should organization make when designing their automation solution?
So parallel execution and scalability, I mean, there are like multiple architecture. I would not want to make it like sponsored thing, but you do have hyper execute from lambda test which you can use and do some parallel execution. But there are like multiple things which you can consider for parallel execution, and you can divide your test into multiple XMLs. You can divide your it. There are like multiple approaches. You can use different tools. You can use different layers to automate. Let's say in an application you have 100 cases, 60 cases you can automate in API 14 Selenium. You can run both the things in parallel. Or even if you want to develop everything in Selenium, you can still have like multiple XMLs divided into like multiple pieces and run on multiple Amazon instance or any cloud like Lambda test if you are using. Like we use Lambda test cloud, so we run our automation in like multiple parallel lines.
All right. We have another interesting question. This we hear quite often, right, from a lot of different folks. Can you advise or cover the best framework for the mobile apps built on Flutter? Flutter getting most popular these days.
Best framework for mobile apps built on Flutter. I don't know what Flutter is, but I'm hoping it's a mobile application framework like a React Native. And I think in any framework, APM, I would say we consider Detox in past, we used different frameworks, but at the end, after spending 1 or 2 years, we came back to APM. APM have a lot of capability to run all your UI things on the mobile apps, and but UI automation will always be a little bit flaky. You have to consider your automation on the API side as well, so that it requires less maintenance and you get more benefit out of it. Plus, the execution speed will also be much better. And programming, I think APM is free of programming. You can use any program. There are like other tools which you want to use for AI. Everyone is running towards AI. There are tools which we use, like SLQ is basically AI driven tool, low code or no code, and then you can use it.
Awesome. So we have next question from Avinash. What can be the popular strategy to speed up your UI automation tests?
So for UI automation test, uh, first and foremost, what I think, I don't know, others people made that mistake or not. What we did is every test case have similar screens to go to. Let's say you are running a test which which goes from A to C. And then there is another test which goes from not B to C. So while running those tests, what we did is we combined these two tests and do all the hops from A, B, and C. That basically solves the problem where you need no need to rerun, re-log in your script, because most of the scripts where it takes time is when you need to basically tear down and tear up. You need to log in, you need to initialize and all that stuff. If you combine most of the things into one big set, that will solve a lot more things for UI. But parallel execution is the ultimate solution at that.
Awesome. So we have a pretty interesting question on the topic of the webinar from Jatin. How does using a database utility for test data solve some of the challenges associated with traditional storage file methods?
Traditional storage file methods, if you see, is you are providing your test data with, let's say, if I want to test with Misbah, let's how Misbah will look in my app. I'm basically hard coding that particular user in my storage or traditional file methods. When I'm doing that, I'm only relying on one or two users which I have provided into the Excel sheet or the file storage systems. I'm basically closing the gate of quality test. To open the gate for quality test, what you need to do is go to SQL database or any database you are using, get data on the runtime based on the scenarios from database, use that data, and you, because sometimes we all, most of the time, not sometimes, we see it test case is working for this set of test data but not working for this set of test data. And most of the time, when you use file storage, you basically use test data which is working. You do not use test data which is not working. But when you go into the database and get data on the runtime, you do not control that thing. You do not control quality. You do quality test and you find more benefit. You basically at the end you deliver much better product or good quality product at the end if you open the gate and do not restrict your automation script with one or two test data.
Awesome. So we have another question on the topic from Kushbu, right? How to overcome test data challenges? I think this would summarize the entire webinar for the audience. So short answer would be helpful, I guess.
I will share. I think you can just see my recording again. Go to the architecture slide. That will give the answer.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have another question from Sonia. How does the concept of an API cloud for database communication address potential challenges related to database connectivity and compatibility?
So API cloud for database communication area. So API cloud do not solve that problem. It's basically you can write all these utilities in your framework as well. Let's say you have 10 different applications. You have 10 different places to store all those utilities, or you use common credential, common functions. So you can do that within your different frameworks. But the main problem which we are solving here is reutilizing the queries to different applications. So let's say if you write a hard-coded SQL query in application A, and the same query is utilized by application B, you will hard code the same query in application B. What we are solving here is we do not write this query in application A, B, or C, or D. We write in Swagger API Cloud, and that cloud will be reused by multiple systems. And the best part is if anything happens later, let's say you change your business logic or you change your backend system from where you are fetching the data, there is no need to change your data from different automation frameworks because you do not have any hard coding. The only place where you need to change is the API cloud. That basically more scalable, more maintainable solution than putting everything into the automation frameworks.
Awesome. So we have another good question from Avinash. Okay, how to implement security in Swagger using authentication login?
Authentication login, basically you are using, I'm hoping, the database credentials, which are like service users. You can implement security, but it is not very secure because at the end you are storing those credentials into configuration files, which can go. So other things which you can do is using JWT, or you can use API gateway. We are using secret manager and API gateway. So there are like multiple authentication methods available. We thought like secret manager is the best because JWT token you can still decode if you go to any website, but authentication methods like secret manager you cannot. It's hard to penetrate.
Awesome. Great question from everyone. We have got a couple of more lined up, but in the interest of time, I know we're at the top of the hour, so we'll make it a wrap. But before that, I'd like to uh, close the poll that we have, and here are the results. How
It's
to
good to
provide
see
test?
that
Yeah,
it's good to
we got
see
27
that
votes.
40% of users are using APIs to get the test data, but 37% are still using SQL. But Excel, I would say, switch to SQL queries always, guys.
Awesome, guys. So you have the recommendation here. Perfect, perfect. I know there are a couple of more questions coming in, but again, we are at the top of the hour. We'll make this a wrap. Thanks again, Garvit, for this amazing and insightful session, and thanks to the audience for making it so engaging. Thanks for the enthusiasm again, and we'll have the recording available again for the session in the schedule option. And if there would be any questions unanswered, we have community.lambdas.com. We'll be posting the answers there, and you can also catch up with Garvit within the fluid spaces as well. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks for joining. A wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Garvit, again. Bye bye.